Hello, everyone. My name's Nikki, and I'm the Education Coordinator here at the BCACC. This is the Matters of the Mind presentation. Tonight is focused on how to choose a counselor and what to expect from the first session. Tonight we have, and you may see them on the side of the screen, we've got Jan McNeill and we've got Claire Mazeneuve. And both have been registered clinical counselors for over 20, 30, 35 plus years. So Jan is up in Nanaimo, co-owner of Covalent Health Consulting, and Claire is the director of the Alpine Counseling Clinic in Vancouver. And both of these clinical counselors came forward as wanting to bring forward information about this journey to finding a counselor and what that really looks like for people. I'll quickly say the BCACC is a professional association for clinical counselors in BC, and all of our members carry the Registered Clinical Counseling designation you can see right there. And this offering that we're doing tonight is fairly new. It's called the Matters of the Mind presentations, and it's really for the public, anything that is helpful in terms of creating a mental health resource. So my hope is that the conversation tonight is really valuable for you, and then we record it and make it available from our website as well after that. I want to take one moment to acknowledge the lands that I'm coming from. So I'm coming from the Lekwungen territory, known today as the Esquimalt and Songhees Nations. And I recognize that we're probably going to have people from around the province from many different nations as well. I'm going to start sharing my screen and welcome Jan and Claire. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Shall we just get right into it?
Sounds good.
Okay, let's do it. Let me grab my list of questions here. So I think let's just start at the very beginning and kind of move through someone's process of finding a counselor. So I would love, Jan, maybe we could start with you. Can we begin by talking about even just looking for a counselor, the very beginning of that journey?
Yeah, it's so difficult to think about coming to see a counselor in the first place, right? Things aren't going well for you, you're struggling in certain areas, or you just want to improve your quality of life. And so, the idea is to find a counselor that fits for you. So depending on the issue that you're actually looking for, so let's say you're looking for a relationship counseling. So when you go on to the search engines, which we'll talk about, and I know Nikki's going to show you the BCACC one around how to find a counselor tool, there's opportunities to sort of highlight what you're looking for. So maybe you're in relationship, maybe you're deciding that you want to deal with some of your anxiety. Maybe you're going to be needing to deal with some grief and loss. Or maybe you're doing some life transitions. You're retiring and it's like, okay, what do I do now? Who am I now that I'm retired? And so really, when you are looking for a counselor, know sort of what the goal of the treatment is that you're hoping to get out of it. And then as you're using the search tools, oftentimes they'll have those categories. And so click on those categories, right? And then once you've sort of done that, and also it is nice if you can to see someone in person. I get that not everybody's going to have that accessibility. And so online is a fantastic resource, as we've all figured out over the pandemic. But if you can, sort of look for your area because it's close by, or you can get it, or maybe it's by your work and so you can go to and from. So just, the convenience of locale is going to be an idea that you're sort of looking at.
Yeah.
And then the biggest thing for me is to actually find 3 different counselors that you think you could relate to. So read through their bios. We all have bios on our websites. We all have a description of our philosophies or our modalities. And we'll talk a little bit more about those modalities a little bit later in the webinar. But the biggest thing is for you to feel comfortable connecting. So we all have pictures. As much as we hate to have our photo taken, we all have our pictures on there. Look, see if you can relate, see if you can connect with that. Look at the bios. and then trust what you're feeling. Think, no, doesn't feel right to me. And then you're going to find someone who goes, oh yeah, I could connect with that person. So find 3 to start with, at least, and then start, phoning around and connecting more. I know, Claire, you probably have a few things to add to that.
Well, I think that's good. I mean, just to follow up on that, the search engines that you're talking about, I think there's the BCACC Association. There's also Psychology Today that's very good, and Counseling BC. I mean, we're talking to BC audience here, so I think it's called counselingbc.com. I mean, those are 3 of the major ones where you'll find a good clinical counselor. What I'd like to add to that too is that if you know people, ask. Because I know that certainly at our clinic, I'd say that at least half of our clients have come through word of mouth. So there's nothing like a referral from somebody that that has been to a clinic or to a counselor and have been satisfied. So my first instinct is always to ask around, do you know anybody that's an acupuncturist, that's a medical this or that? And if not, then go online. In my days, it was the yellow pages. Now it's like online. And as Jan said, look for somebody that's in your neighborhood. If you even just Google, as Jan said, is it relationship? Is it grief? Is it anxiety? Is it a car accident? So just Google MVA specialist counselors near me, or relationship counselors near me. Start with that, because even though you might want to do online, at some point you may want to see people in person too. That's how most people like to do counseling. So go online, look who's close by, and then start figuring out who's going to be the best match.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then, oh, did you have one more thing to
Well,
say?
I was just going to say, I love the idea about a referral. Sometimes, though, we're not going to find the same best fit with the counselor. And so what I often will suggest is if that counselor works for a group, you might actually be able to find somebody else in that group that you may connect with.
Exactly.
So look at all their bios.
Exactly.
We have a clinic here at Covalent Health, and there's 10 of us. And quite honestly, we're not upset if you think, I want to try so-and-so out because it might be a better fit. We as clinicians just want you to find the best fit for you. So we're okay if, you check us out, a couple sessions here, a couple sessions there. It's really important that you find your best fit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. And then, and I do think I'd love to revisit that in a minute, because we had a lot of questions about best fit.
Okay.
It was definitely a big one. And I'd love to just step aside for 1 second and just say, from there, so you're doing your search, what should someone expect that process to be? And maybe I'll start with Claire and then go to Jan afterwards.
Well, I think that I think what's important today, as it always has been, is the connection. And there's a lot of stuff that's done online today. And there are some counselors that are all online, and you can book with them online, and you never get to talk to them before you even meet them or anybody. So I'm older. I'm still a big believer in relationships, in connection. When I call somewhere, I want to talk to somebody. I don't want to talk to an answering machine. I want to talk to somebody. So the next step is call the person, talk to somebody, and hear their voice, see what they have to say. Okay. So the next step is to find out, what do they offer? I might be getting ahead of myself here, but I like to offer, sometimes when clients don't know and they're shopping around, they may need to have a free consultation. We do that a lot at our clinic. okay? Because as Jan says, finding the good fit is the key to it all. Research has shown that 50% of the success of your treatment is having a good connection with the counselor. Even if the counselor is not all that experienced, when you have a good connection with them, it'll make a huge difference in your treatment. If you have a counselor that has a lot of different treatment modalities and a lot of degrees and PhDs and all that, but you don't have a connection, then there's a problem with that. So the next thing is to find out, what's the deal? How do these people work? What can I do? Of course, how much is it and all that, but how can I get in to see you? Do they offer a free consultation? A half-hour free consultation? We can talk later about what to expect in that. Or a 15-minute phone consultation at the very least. Talk to me. What can I expect from this process? So that's my next bet. Okay, so you call up, you find out, is anybody available to talk to me?
And I'm just wondering, is that a fairly standard thing, a free consultation?
I think the 15-minute free consultation is quite, is quite common.
Yeah.
I don't know how common the half-hour free consultation is, either in person or online, but we certainly like to do that at our clinic, especially when people call and they're referred to a counselor or myself, and if I don't take new clients, then it's like, well, let's try somebody else. And as you say, Jan, there might not be somebody, you may not be able to see them in the clinic, but there might be somebody else in the clinic. If we have a chat and find out, what is your need? What is going on for you? Help me understand. And it doesn't take long to get the gist of what that person is needing. There's a big difference between somebody who's having panic attack 3 times a week and somebody who just lost their spouse, right? So we're just trying to decipher, what are your needs going to be? And that initial, it's an investment, right? And it's not just a financial investment. And a lot of people have extended benefits, so they might say, well, it's not really, I'm not forking out the money, but you are. It's a financial investment, but it's an emotional investment. And I know I have heard clients come to therapy and say they lose their therapist after 1 or 2 sessions, or it doesn't work, and they'll say, I don't know that I want to start all this over again. As you said, it took so long for them to even get here and to have the courage to make that first phone call. So that's important. To me, first contact is really important. And I'm a really, really big believer in there's no second time. You don't have, what's it say? There's never a second chance to make a first impression. That first impression.
Yeah. And Claire, I'll second that in terms of, I think it is pretty standard across most of us that we'll do a 15-minute consultation, usually on the phone. Often at times it turns into half an hour, the conversations and the questions. We at our office, our admin, Leslie's wonderful, and she knows about each of our specialties of each of our counselors. So someone can phone up and say, and talk a little bit about, not go into detail, but what they're looking for, and our admin, Leslie can say, oh, so-and-so works really well with that. Oh, yeah, you want to have a child? Okay, so this one works with littles, sort of under the age of 10. So again, if it's a bigger office and there is one, main phone call, oftentimes your admin person, or you phone in and ask. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it is pretty standard. You do 15 minutes.
And then in terms of that, because I guess it's really understanding for people what they can expect for that 15 minutes, like what that interaction will be. It's not going to be digging deep into what you've got going on. It's really about feeling the fit, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So someone would phone in, we'd do a 15-minute test. What are they looking for? What are they hoping to get out of counseling? Let me tell you a little bit about me and my approach, right? And see if that's a fit for you. Yeah. Because someone may be looking for CBT and they're phoning up someone who only does EMDR. Well, that's not going to work, right? So we want to be able to explain, well, what is EMDR? Okay, it's a trauma therapy for, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So it's an opportunity for us as counselors to sort of say, this is sort of the way and the philosophy that I have, and this is how I work. Would that be a fit for you? As well as the client can sort of say, well, I had someone before and I didn't find this worked. Okay, great. You know what? That's really good for me to know, because that's actually not how I work. I work more from a body oriented lens or whatever. So I think it is important to understand that first 15 minutes, kind of like that speed dating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of that speed dating where you just sort of, okay, what do you do? Right. But it's really to figure out whether or not you feel like you have a connection.
Yeah.
But also, if you're going, as you say, if you've made a referral and you say, look, I see this counselor and she's absolutely fantastic, go and see her. But your issue is completely different than me, so you call up the counselor and you say, my friend is seeing you and this is what's going on. Well, the counselor might say, ooh, I don't deal with that. That's not my area of specialty. So whether you're speaking directly to the counselor or the admin person, you do need to find out, are you there? Are you gonna? And to me, the half-hour free consultation is really critical, because it's a chance for the client to come either in person. I very much here anyway, I very much encourage people to come in person, because you get a vibe, you get a feel for the other person, right? So come in person, and it's a chance for the client to give me the headlines of what's going on for them. I want to hear the headlines. I'm not going to start talking about the rape that happened and when it happened and how you feel about that, because that's opening a can of worms that I know I can't deal with. So that's unethical. So it's very, very different than a counseling session. It should be a place where the counselor is in charge of making sure that it contains what's going on and what is being said. So give me the headlines of what's going on for you, because we're not going to start from age 6, right? So it's what's going on today. We want to ask a few questions about you, your life, maybe just get a sense, and your availability. And then it's a chance for the counselor to give you some feedback about how they think they can help you. Because that's what a client wants to hear. At the end of the day, to me, when clients come to me, they have one question in mind. Can you help me? That's all they want to know. I'll find out about you a little bit more later on in the process. But my first question to the client is, can you help me? I'm having panic attacks 3 times a week. Can you help me? I've lost my partner. Do you know anything about grief and loss? Can you help me? And that's what the counselor needs to be able to answer in that half an hour, 15 minutes. And that's what the counselor has a duty to me to be able to respond to authentically and professionally to a client, and to be able to say, listen, I hear what's going on for you. I understand. Let me tell you about the ideas that I have about how I can work with you on this. And I like to give clients some ideas about how we're going to work with this and how I would approach this and what I would do, because I'll have a plan for that client. So that first half hour is, maybe not everybody count, or 15 minutes, maybe not everybody counts, every counselor do it, but it's worth the investment. Go to somebody who's going to be worth, and don't hesitate to request it. I want to tell you as a client, don't hesitate to ask for it. Even if it's not on a counselor's website or bio, ask for it. Will you give me 15 minutes of your time or 30 minutes of your time?
Yeah.
See what they say.
Thank you so much for that, because I think people are always hesitant to sort of place that ask out there, right? And I guess we've really also, my next question, but I almost think we've answered it, really understanding that not all counselors are suitable for all situations.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we all have our area of sort of specialty or interest or focus that we potentially have done extra training in. And so this is where it is important to sort of find out when you are doing that Googling or looking at it, finding out about what the issue is, because a lot of us will put on our, those pinned, that stuff, that hashtag stuff, what our specialties are, what we've got extra training in. And so, for example, I don't work with children, but I have colleagues that do in my office. So I'll sort of work with 12 and above. But so if you're looking for, a child counselor, I'm not it. But I can tell you there's 2 or 3 in my office that are amazing with little kids. And so really looking at their specialty, and, every grief and loss is going to be different than, someone's, like an assault or something, like a car accident, right? So you really do want to find out what people's strengths are, because that also speaks to them, right? And so they're going to be there for you in that area.
Yeah.
If they're not interested in car accidents, then don't go to them.
The other thing too is I talk to a lot of clients because often they're wondering what their needs are. And I will often do a 15-minute phone consult with them and set them up with a counselor. But what I hear from clients a lot is they'll tell me often what worked and what didn't work in their previous therapy. Yeah. And I think that's really important to hear that. What are they? Some people, they're very clear they want somatic-based therapies, that CBT didn't work for them. They're looking for something different. So really being clear on, if you know what you're looking for, not being afraid to ask for that. And looking at what are the modalities that person is using. And sometimes people understand what those modalities are, but a lot of clients, they don't understand. They don't know what sensory motor psychotherapy is, or brain spotting is, or, somatic experiencing is. They don't know, but it'll be, and I come back to this, it's about the right fit. Sometimes people come to us and they say, I'm coming to you because I want EMDR. And I'll say, well, that's great. But I'm not going to guarantee you that I'm going to do EMDR on you. First, I want to do an intake and find out what's going on. And then we can talk about what are the right modalities for you. So so I don't know, maybe I'm getting off topic there, but it's really, I think that connection is important, and what the counselor works with, their modalities and their style, and hearing all about that, and hearing from the client what worked and what hasn't worked in the past.
Yeah, and I'm just hearing that that's valuable information, that a counselor's not going to take offense that you're speaking of what did or did not work for you in a previous moment in time, right?
Yeah, and I think, it's important to remember that you need to try out a couple of different counselors. And, when someone may fit for a period of time and then think, you know what, okay, I need to switch. It's okay, right? You don't buy the first car you sit in. You don't buy the first or rent the first apartment that you see, or date the first person that you're interested in. You really have to check it out. And I was talking with someone over the weekend. They said they fired, 2 or 3 before they found the right one. I had someone else say, I had to break up with 2 or 3 before I found the right one. Right? It's okay, to do that, because really it's about, we as therapists got into this because we want to help. And if we're not helping, we want you to go and find someone that is helpful towards you.
Great. Okay, let's talk about the first session. what the first session looks like, because I think when people start counseling, it's, it's an emotional time, it's a transitional time. There's might be a moment of desperation happening for someone at that moment. So what can someone expect from it? Because I think that sometimes that first session can be a bit different than what people need on that emotional level. So maybe I'll start with Claire and then I'll go to Jan.
All right. Well, I'm a big believer in the importance of the first session with a client. So to me, the first session is really, again, not about digging everything out or up, but it's really about getting a good sense of my client. I want to know about many aspects of your life. I want to get a good rounded picture of who you are, what your resources are, what your strengths are, what you've gone through, what your issues are right now. And again, a lot of it is going to be the headlines of what's going on for you a little bit, because I want to be able to map out what kind of a person do I have in front of me, because it's not about, I keep coming back to this panic attack because it's been my specialty. I can have 3 clients that come in with panic attacks, and I will treat all 3 of them completely differently because they have different resources, different possibilities, different understanding of themselves. So it's really about understanding the client, understanding where they're at, what their needs are going to be. And then it's about me in my mind, I'm formulating a treatment plan for that client. I want to be able to give them some feedback at the end of the session in terms of what I see is going on for them, what I think is happening, what I think will be useful for them, how I'm going to work with them, and how many sessions we're going to be looking at, and how we would do those sessions. So I want to give them information that is going to be positive and leave them with a sense of hope. If anything, at the end of the first session, you want your client to leave with a sense of hopefulness that, number one, you can help me as a counselor, or if not, you know who to refer me to, that I'm not so damaged or this is so bad that nobody can help me. I'm still helpable, so to speak. That there is a way to get through this, and this is what it's going to take. I also want to set really realistic expectations. I know that in my first sessions, I often say, look, I don't do magic. I don't do miracles. I do therapy. So if you think you're going to get this fixed, these panic attacks that you've had for 20 years, or this depression you've had for 10 years, it ain't going to go away in 2-3 sessions. This is what I need from you, because I have an idea about how I'm going to work with you on this. So I need a commitment from you, because we're entering into a relationship. To me, it's a relationship. I always know where my clients are at. They never show up. We're always in a relationship. I know where we're at in the development of our process. So that first session to me is so critical, because, sometimes people leave feeling like, oh my God, I've got so many problems, especially when you've listened to yourself explain a lot of things that are going on for you that aren't working, right? But you need to be able to leave with a sense of hope and also confidence in the counselor. And I know that research has shown that what's really important, that what clients are looking for in a counselor, they want somebody who's warm, who's friendly, who's approachable. And that's key, because that in itself is a loving relationship that heals. But also they want to know that the counselor is competent. Do you know what you're going to do with me? Do you know what you're talking about? Have you seen this before? Do you understand what I'm telling you about? Because if you don't, then you need to tell me, and you need to be honest and send me to where I can get help. So to me, that's what the first session is about. And then the following sessions is then we start working into that process. We have a plan as to what we're going to do here. It's not just how do you feel today?
Yeah. And Jan, do you have anything to add in terms of that first session?
Yeah. So I agree with everything that Claire has said. And the thing I would add to that is that first session, the first 1 or 2 sessions really is about creating safety and stabilization. Okay. So we as therapists feel that you need to feel safe with us and we need to feel safe with you, so that we have this back and forth, that we know that we can actually help you to stay regulated or to get regulated. And that's that part of stabilization. And so oftentimes in that first session, just as Claire's saying, we're finding out about what are your resources? What are your coping strategies? How can we use those in session if we need to, when things become overly emotional or you're feeling overwhelmed? So we're not going to dive right into, especially something like trauma or, big challenges that you've had, because we need to create that safety between both of us in that room, that we've got you and we've got you. And that you're going to be okay, that, like Claire says, we do have a plan. We have seen this. We know where we're going. But you don't know that we know where we're going. So there needs to be that, those first couple of sessions, it's really about getting to know each other, right? And for us to really find out, what are your resources? What are your coping skills? So that we can draw on those as the sessions get more intense. You're not going to have a really intense first session. You shouldn't be going somewhere and dumping all your trauma, because that feels in some ways, you've blurted it out and you feel really vulnerable after that. Right. And so sometimes it's hard to come back to the next appointment. What do I have left to talk about? Right. And so part of this is really being able to, and sometimes in therapies, the slower you go, the faster you heal. And so that's what Claire's talking about, is we're going to take our time initially, so that we get to know you, we get to know your resources, coping, and that we can actually help you when we get into the deeper work.
Right.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
And I just want to add to that too, that, I think that clients today are so much more sophisticated than when I first started practicing. The internet has educated our clients, and good, rightly so, and that's great. So a lot of times clients will come in and they've already got their diagnosis or whatever, or they understand that they have symptoms of PTSD and all that. So, and I think that clients today are doing a lot more personal work and introspective work. And there's a lot of tools out there to help clients. So I think gone are the days where you're going to a therapist just to be able to be heard and seen. That's just par for the course. But, when I will often say to clients, listen, if you just want me to listen to you, buy your friend a lunch. It's going to be a lot cheaper. Just tell her to be quiet and listen to you, and you'll pay for the lunch. When you come to a therapist, to me, you expect results. You expect some transformational experiences along the way to help you transcend trauma, rise above. So just being able to feel like that first session gives you that hope and that possibility that that's the work we're going to be doing. It's not going to happen in the first session. As Jan says, we got to go slow. We got to make it safe. But you don't have to give a big production to your clients to send them that message. It's pretty clear.
Yeah.
When you have that confidence, it's pretty clear, and they get that. So, yeah.
So do you find do people who are starting on a counseling journey, are their expectations, do they have, are people showing up looking for things to happen faster? Or I'm just wondering, I want to make sure that people have a good sense of the expectations they have matching what they're going to get.
Right, right, right. I wrote a great newsletter on that just last month. Can I go on that, Jan?
Go for it. Go for it.
I think, I wrote a really good newsletter about how to make counseling effective. And there's no doubt that you need the counselor to be competent, to know what they're doing, and to have the skills and all of that. And at the same time, there's work on the part of the client also. Again, we don't do magic. You do your part, I do my part. You do your part between session, I do my part in session. And there's no doubt that sometimes people will have these really profound transformational experiences in session, or deep insights, or whatever. But the question becomes, what do you do with that in between sessions? Because, I have this thing that I will open up a session and really be focused about, and ask the client, so what have you been thinking about since our last session, and since we talked about blah, blah, blah? What are your thoughts about what we did last session? I want to know, did you think about this? Did you do anything about that? Did you have any insights about that? Did you journal about it? Something. So that when I hear, oh, yeah, right, last session. Oh, God, that was last week. That's so far away. I don't know. Remind me, what did we do anyway? I'm thinking, you're not going to get much out of the counseling process because you checked out after you left the session. So that's not gonna, you haven't let that work marinate inside of you. You haven't let it germinate and sprout inside of you in the meantime. So, but when people come back and they open their journal and they say, yeah, I had a lot to say about that, I wrote about it, then they're engaged in the process. I'm engaged. They're going to get somewhere. So I think it's not fair to put all the expectation on the counselor. And again, another thing I want to say about that, because now you're getting me going here, when I think about the clients, when clients say to me, yeah, I've been to counseling and it didn't really do much for me or anything, I still try to defend my profession, my counselors. And I'll say, number one, have you considered that maybe you wouldn't be where you're at right now had you not done that work with the counselor? Can you maybe give some credit that at least you're in this different stage right now that you've been at? And I go, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. Yes, that's true. So number one, because, it's like that with anything. It's like you come in with 10 symptoms. We've helped you with 8 of them, but 2 of them are still difficult. And you go, I don't think this is working. Well, what about the 8 symptoms that we helped you with? What does that mean? Does that go anywhere? And I don't let people get away with that because I want credit for the work I've done and with how it's helped. So I take a really good inventory of what are your symptoms that you want help with. And then we reevaluate because I want praise. Okay. So the other thing too is that when people say to me, yes, I've been seeing this counselor and I think I need something different because this isn't helping or something, I'll say to them, have you told your counselor that you feel like it's stalling, that nothing's happening lately, that you feel that you're not getting what you want? Have you spoken to that person that you have a relationship with? For a few reasons. Number one, because give them a chance to redeem themselves, to get on a better path, to at least send you into a better direction. Give them a chance to get feedback about their work, because as counselors, we always want that feedback. Secondly, it's a chance for you to stand up for yourself and to ask for what you need and for what you want. So sometimes I'm just going to send them back to their counselor and say, you go tell your counselor what's going on. Tell her that you want to do this differently and that's not working. And if she could hear you, then you could work with her. If it doesn't work, then call me back. So it's a two-way street, this counseling thing. It's not just I'm coming here, you fix me. It's the same as your doctor. You go to your doctor and he says, look, I can help you with your heart, but you've got to stop eating French fries every day. And it's like, no, I want to eat the French fries. You just keep helping me with my heart, or so yeah. So I think the expectations, I'm constantly reevaluating that with clients and looking at that.
So I've got a couple things to add to that, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So, for some people, if they don't yet have the courage to go back to their counselor, one of the things you can do is use that information for your next counselor, and then talk to your next counselor about what signal, what can I say? Is there a code word that I can use if I'm finding we're not moving forward, or I'm at kind of a plateau? And so, use that information to benefit your next therapy. And, for some people, it might feel too overwhelming, and totally okay. But then use that piece of information for your next counselor. And then the other thing is that, as Claire was talking about, in between sessions, that's where a lot of the work is done. So we sort of, it's like a coach, right? So you have a coaching, you have one training, but if you don't do any training in between those two sessions, right, you're not going to get any benefit. If you just go to training once a week, you need to do the other 2 or 3 sessions to keep up your training. It's the same kind of thing with therapy. So we're usually going to give you things to practice, or to experiments to try this out and see what you think. Is this helpful or is this not? And we're looking for that feedback so that we have an understanding of what worked or what didn't. Yeah. And why didn't it? Okay, so guess what? We're going down the wrong path. Let's shift and go try this path and see if this path is helpful, because not every intervention and strategy is going to work for everybody. Yeah. So we're going to have a whole array of ideas and strategies, but we're not necessarily going to have each one work for the exact same person, right? Like, they're not going to all work for the same person. So we need to be, trying these things out. So that's where we need your feedback. Did this work? Did it not? Was that helpful? Was it not? Okay, that was too much. Guess what? Okay, so next time we'll just try one thing. Let's try one thing. And so really, it's about this negotiation. And this is the place to practice that unhealthy and all the healthy communication, right? This is the place to try all those things. Say, that didn't work. Okay, what didn't work about it? Okay, well, let's unpack that. Let's see how we can figure this out together so that it does end up helping in a different way, or a different strategy can work differently.
I'm going to switch gears for a minute. And really talk about, because I know ideally in person is always wonderful, but not everybody can, and especially remote locations and all of that. So when we're looking at online counseling, what can someone expect from the first session of online counseling, or what are just some considerations for online counseling? And I'll start with you, Jan.
Yeah, thanks. With online counseling, it's going to be really important that you have a place that's confidential, or that you have a place where you're not going to be overheard, and that you feel safe to talk about whatever it is that you need to talk about. So if you're talking about a relationship issue, you don't want your partner to be overhearing. Or if you're struggling as a parent, you don't necessarily want to be talking about your kids, because the kids are going to get upset that you're talking about them. Mm-hmm. And nor are you going to want to share your deeper, issues when it's going to be overheard. So we really encourage you to make sure you've got a safe place, whether or not that's in your car. I have a lot of parents that go into their car and phone me from their car, or I've got them on the Zoom in the car, and it's great. It's lovely. I've got others that go in the downstairs room, or they're upstairs, whatever it is, or, So it's really important that you have that sense of privacy is the most important thing. And then oftentimes when you're in the counseling, it can be emotional. So I wouldn't plan right after to go back to work. you need to have some transition time. There needs to be, whether or not you go for a walk, whether or not you have a glass of water, you go to the bathroom, there needs to be some kind of transition between your online session to whatever it is that you're doing next. Mm-hmm. Because you may be, emotionally sort of vulnerable. You don't want to all of a sudden walk out into a public workspace or your family home with lots of little kids running around, and then you end up yelling at them or whatever, because you're overwhelmed or you're exhausted or you're tired or you're emotional. So the two important things for me is really having that sense of privacy and confidentiality, and then making sure that you have a break after the session before you're going to the next thing on your to-do list for the day.
And Claire, do you have anything to add in terms of that?
I don't think so. I think that's pretty brilliant. That's pretty important. That's often, I don't think people think about it that much. It's like, oh yeah, I'm at home, let's do this, it'll be easy. But it's like, and we've had situations happen where other people have overheard the conversation, or they walk out and people are there, guests are there, whatever, at home, and they don't feel good. So I think that's it. Yeah, that's
the only other thing for me is around internet connection. So have a backup. Yes. So if you somehow get, the Zoom call drops or whatever, have a backup where you guys can phone each other and, basically be able to have that opportunity to say, hey, my internet's not going well. Can we just do this on the phone or whatever? Right? Or how about we log in again after we've been booted out? So you have that already set up at the beginning. So there's no sort of sense of panic if the Zoom all of a sudden shuts down, because the internet's spotty, or you freeze, as often happens with the internet, and you freeze in really, funny looking positions. And so just waiting, give it time to sort of come back online, and then saying, you know what, my internet froze. I missed that last little bit. So it's important to sort of really, if you are aware that that's an issue, have a backup where you guys can phone each other.
I think one last thing I'd say is be willing to turn off your emails and all your other notifications and everything, because it's really annoying, when they're distracted, that you get so easily distracted on Zoom. So I really had to learn, shut everything else off. There's nothing else going on. I'm right here with you. That's it. It's easy for people to have their cell phone say, oh, I have to look at this, and so be willing to shut everything off to get the most value out of your money, out of your time.
So we had a couple of questions come in, and I think this might be a global question in terms of recommendations for someone that's gone to counseling but maybe not had a great experience. And you'd mentioned, bringing that forward as something to discuss. But are there any other things that you could say to someone in that space?
What I find is interesting is that we're often in different places in our lives when we try for counseling, or the counseling didn't work before. And I'll often hear for clients to say, I reached out and I just wasn't ready. Yeah. Or, but I'm really ready now. Or, there were certain things and we were able to work on some things, but the rest didn't, some of it didn't fit.
Yeah.
And just recognizing that that's okay. And it's really about you finding your comfort, and you change, and, periods of life, you'll find some things work better and different people worked better. It's really, to me, it's just about where you're at in this moment now and finding the right fit for you now, not about 5 years ago when you tried one or two. Now, what is the best fit for you today? And it could be very different than what was the best fit for you 5 years ago. And that's okay. And so for some clients, they say, oh yeah, well, I've had counseling before, and I found some use for it and some not. And that's all you have to say. you know, you don't have to go into details if you're not comfortable doing that.
Mhm.
We're open to hearing what you want to share with us.
And if it's necessary, you could tell us what worked and what didn't work, you know, or what you're looking for, what you want to be sure you're going to get this time around. And that's great. But I think Jan's got a good point there. I mean, where you were at 5 years ago when you did this could be really different than where you're at now.
Even 6 months ago.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
for some people, their lives change completely in 6 months.
Totally. Yeah. And then a final question that I'll put to you, Claire, is really how can someone know if they are on the right track with their counselor?
Yeah. You know, I always say the proof is in the pudding, right? It's like you, here's the thing. You always know. I think the question really is how can someone listen to what they know? So the issue is not, do I know if I'm on the right track or not? The issue is really, can I listen to my gut feeling here? Because when people say, well, I kept going, even though it didn't feel good, it's like, why did you keep going? You didn't listen to yourself. So how you know, though, if you're on the right track is number one, when you go to the sessions, do you feel good? Now, having said that, I know a lot of clients come to me and I have one client who's almost vomiting before his sessions because it's so anxiety producing for him. But by the end of the session, he feels good. But the next session is going to be all that, you know, has to go to the bathroom and all of that. So how do you feel by the end of the session? Do you feel good? Do you feel like you've been heard and seen? What's your felt sense? Does your gut tell you this is good? Even though the counselor may be quite direct, I'm very direct in the way that I work with clients. I don't beat around the bush, and sometimes these interventions are challenging, but they know that somehow it's necessary for them. And are they making progress in their daily life? Are things changing? So when somebody says to me, well, I've been going for 15 sessions and I haven't had any relief in this, then I have to ask, just like, what's going on? Maybe you need something different, or maybe this is just a very complex case too. So how do you know? You know intuitively if you feel good after you leave from there. You know instinctively if something's happening. And if it's not, are you listening to yourself?
I'd add to that too, that, you know, oftentimes we have goals that we come in with as clients. And if none of those goals are getting met and you don't feel like you really touched on any of them, that's pretty much a sign that it's probably not working for you. Really, the whole idea of coming to counseling for most people is to have a better quality of life and to feel differently.
Yeah.
And if you're not, then try someone different. Because, you know, most people, when they come for therapy, yeah, it can be tough and it can be draining, but you should experience some shifts in your life somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, you should be able to actually tangibly say, yes, this area of my life feels different and better. Or yes, I now know how to manage my anxiety. So I actually don't have as many panic attacks. I'm down to one a month, as opposed to having 2 a week. Exactly. So you should be able to really have some tangible evidence. Or I don't get into, my husband and I aren't fighting, or my wife and I aren't fighting as much, you know, or my kids and I heard a client the other day said, you know, my kids and I aren't arguing. I'm showing up differently and my kids are noticing it. And there's not as much chaos in the house. It's like, great. Okay. So, you know, something's working.
Yeah.
That's how you know.
Yeah. Both of those perspectives are really, really helpful because it does feel like an intangible quality sometimes. Mm. Yeah. So what I would love to do is, I mean, I'll open up for some questions, and in the meantime, I'm just going to share my screen because, like Jan said in the beginning, the BCACC has a Find a Counselor tool, and very recently redid it in a way that's a lot easier to find someone who suits you. And so I will, if I can quickly find it here. There it is.
As you're bringing that up, again,
Yep.
I really encourage people to find at least 2 or 3. At least I usually recommend 3. Phone each of those 3 up, or at least look at those 3 bios, and then really, have those conversations.
Yeah.
I just think it's important. We can't just do 1 or 2. We need to do at least 3.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's great. So here's on the BCACC website, the Find a Counselor tool. And, it's got the big long listing of, 3,600 counselors. So that's fine. But what I want to show you really is the filtering possibilities. And so actually you can filter by accessibility, by location. This is a huge one that is so important if they're accepting clients, right? So a lot of counselors are full, and I know that people get frustrated by calling and calling and calling. So that's a way of just instantly, if people are keeping their profile up to date. So I really just showing you that there is a lot of filtering options in here. You can select more than one things just to bring it right down. And we are adding different things all the time if we are learning that they're valuable for people as well. So that's just to show you that, if I selected, let's say, Abbotsford, don't have to click anything else. That will then populate the page with people who are in Abbotsford, etc. And then when you go on to a single person's profile, you're going to see all sorts of information about them. If they have a website, it's there. Everything that they have identified that they offer, and a little bit of a bio, which I agree with both of you. The bio is so important, whether it's here or on someone's website, someone just speaking about their approach and what they bring to a session. So that's just a quick once over, just to show you that that's one tool to find a counselor and to find someone with availability and who treats what you happen to be dealing with right now in your life. And with that, I think I will just quickly open it up for questions if we have any. I know there was a question just about, is it typical to need to ask for the free 15-minute consultation? I think it really just depends. So don't you think it depends?
Yeah, I mean, everybody in our office offers it. It's just to me, it's just standard. It's an opportunity because, it allows the client to figure out and not waste their money, to see if we even have a connection. Is it even worth bothering to, come in and check into a session? So yeah. I do think that 15 minutes is pretty important.
Yeah.
Can I just add one little thing on that too? Yeah. It's all related to this. I know that the bio is important, but it's a resume.
Yeah.
And I have hired so many counselors over the last 35 years. And I can tell you that you can't tell a counselor by its bio only. You really have to talk to them. And I've had counselors that have fantastic bios, not as great, not as good retention as counselors that have not much on their bio, but their retention rate is just unbelievable. So don't just go with your location, with your specialty, somebody near you and all of that, and referrals, but meet the person. Don't just stop at their bio either. Just it's a resume. It's like, it's not enough. I mean, I've hired tons of people with a resume that, nobody else maybe would look at, and they've been fantastic. So
yeah, that's an important point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do have a question here. Should there be informed consent every session?
So informed consent is there's two different ways of sort of looking at that. Informed consent will actually have at the beginning of every session, every time you're seeing a new counselor, you should have the counselor go over around informed consent so that the information we share is confidential. However, there are situations that we are going to have to break that confidentiality. Is that, if someone if you're thinking of hurting yourself, or you're thinking of hurting somebody else, like killing someone, and we just want to keep everybody safe, right? And every counselor will have a different way of doing that, but we really want to keep everybody just safe. And then if we know of a child or a minor being hurt in some way, we're going to want to have a conversation with you around, how to keep that person safe. Or sometimes if you're involved with the legal system, sometimes your notes can be subpoenaed, and that would be the reason why. So that's usually we do it at the beginning of the treatment. So each time you come into the office for your session, you're aware of that information. So that continues throughout the duration of your counseling with your counselor, if that makes sense. Now, in terms of informed consent, so the more trauma informed the clinician is, they should be asking if it's okay to do an intervention or if we're doing an experiment or something, or we're practicing doing some role play, or what we're introducing an intervention. There should be some conversation around what that intervention is, the reasons why, and are you okay with this? So that we consider another form of informed consent. And that really is appropriate so that your body has an opportunity to really decide whether it wants to go along this path or not in terms of the therapeutic work that we're doing. And so that should be happening every session. But in terms of the confidentiality piece, break confidentiality, that is assumed because you usually have to sign a waiver to say that you've read it and you understand it. And that's assumed that it carries throughout the whole counseling experience. I hope that's answered. Claire, do you have anything to add around that?
That's brilliant. That says it all.
Okay. I'm hoping that got the right answer.
I know that from the registrants there were, but you know what? I mean, I'm looking at all the questions that came in, and I really believe we've thoroughly covered them. So unless there's something new.
The only thing that's coming up for me is about modalities.
Yeah.
So when people are looking at modalities, you're going to see cognitive behavior, you're going to see cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, you're going to see EMDR, which is a trauma therapy, or sensory motor psychotherapy, somatic experiencing. DBT is dialectical behavior therapy. So I would Google, I would say, what the modality is, Google it and see if it's a fit for you, kind of thing, right? Everybody is, as Claire was saying, they're so informed now, but the modalities basically, is part of it. And if you're looking for a specific one, great, hit that modality stuff. If not, really go with it. It's as Claire's saying, it's 50 to 75% is what research shows. It's about the relationship to the effectiveness of counseling.
Well, I want to thank both of you so much. It's incredibly invaluable information, because I think many people just don't know how this journey starts. So I want to thank you both for bringing all of those perspectives. And I want to thank everybody who registered, the people who are going to watch it later. And thank you everyone for joining us this evening. And we'll call it a wrap and take off and read a book or find something fun to do.
Thanks, Nikki, for organizing this. I think it's really helpful for everybody. So I appreciate you doing that.
Absolutely.
Pleasure to be here.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Jen. Bye, Claire. And goodbye, everybody
Bye.
else.
Bye.